Hi people, Berg here again. Yeah, it's story time again, and I'm not gonna lie, I thought that the last video I recorded was going to be the last story time video, but then again, I have no real timeline, in the sense that I don't really know when I'll be stopping definitively, or I don't have a definitive time in mind. But yeah, in any case, here goes. I felt like recording again, and I have a story that's worth recording, or a story that's worth passing on to you guys. Give me a second. Yeah, I have a story that's worth passing on to you guys. So let's just get into it. Long story short, there is a resort here to another resort, aside from ones I've discussed in the past. It's called Mountain and Valley, but it's in Dutch, of course, and so it's called Berg Dal. Berg means mountain in Dutch, and that's why my name is Ravenberg. So Berg means mountain in Dutch, and Dal means valley, as in a ravine. So the name of the place literally translates to mountain and valley. And the reason it does that is because the landscape is exactly the way you envision it. I'm not saying it's the Grand Canyon, but it is an uneven terrain. You've got actual mountains of 50 meters, 70 meters tall, or 70 meters high, whatever. And then you've got, when you're on top of that mountain, it's literally a beautiful view overlooking the valley. And the Surinamese River is right there along the side, along the coastline. And yeah, from now on, I'll be referring to the place simply in its original name, called Berg Dal. So in any case, former plantation Berg Dal was turned into a naturistic resort, like a lot of other former plantations here. But it is one of the most well-known, arguably one of the most well-known former plantations in Suriname. And as a resort, it's very beautiful. And if you want to see what the place is like, what it looks like, then check out the links in the description below. I have plenty of recreational videos, more than a few recreational videos of I think 2 times or 3 times that I went there. And yeah, the place is nice. It's really, really nice. The view that you have over the Surinamese River near a swimming pool that they built there is amazing. But yeah, not a lot of people are familiar with Berg Dal's dark history, and the story is simply too long to tell it to you guys by memory, and I would also sell the story short if I were to shorten it. So I'm literally just going to read an expansive story from an anonymous source, someone that has most likely worked at that place for an extended amount of time. We're talking about decades. Maybe 3 decades, 2 decades at least, 10 to 15 to 20 to 30 years, you name it. So that person knows what's happening, and bottom line is that the place is haunted, but you'll hear from the story why. Let me just get down to reading it. As in most cases regarding story time, or basically any video I record, if I recite something in Dutch, it's simply me translating it from Dutch into English. Oh yeah, sent in by anonymously. The header reads Berg Dal, so mountain and hill. The devil goes nuts there. I'll do my story about the place Berg Dal. I would like to keep my name hidden, please, or I would like to remain anonymous, since I do not want trouble with anyone. I know a lot more than I will divulge here. I hope that people can understand that. Because I don't want to know, because I don't want people to track me down, or I don't want to know exactly, I don't want people to know who I am exactly. I'll keep most of that information for that reason to myself, and I won't go too deeply into detail, otherwise I might get people reading the story might uncover who I am, or my secret of who I am, my identity might come to light. I had to think for a long time on whether I should do this story. But I'll still do so, albeit in a careful way, so that people can be careful. I'll Let it also be noted that I've worked at Berg Dal for a lot of years, and it's absolutely not a good place. A lot has happened in the past, and the place does not have a beautiful history. Back in times of slavery, back in colonial times, before the abolishment of slavery, there were hundreds of slaves exactly on that location, taken prisoner, and they were tortured in the most gruesomest of ways. They were then hung upside down, and they were decapitated after they had been tortured. A lot of bloodbaths have taken place there, and all of that is happening where the resort's swimming pool is. That's why there's a rule that after 6 p.m. people aren't allowed to swim there, because things have happened in the past. I would also like to I'd like to interject here, and I'd like to say that that doesn't have to necessarily be the case. Okay, the author or the person that wrote and published the story, or the person that sent the story to the publisher of the story itself. So the source indicates that there's a rule, but I just want to state that this is a basic rule locally at least, and this is also, as far as I know, internationally the case. You're not allowed to swim in a swimming pool or any other swimming hole or swimming spot after dark, and dark begins at sunset, which is at 6 p.m. So that doesn't have to necessarily be the case. That doesn't discredit her in any way, shape, or form, assuming that it's a woman. My intuition tells me that it's a woman, and logic also does. But again, assuming that it's a woman, this doesn't discredit her. But I just thought that needed pointing out, because the resort is not the only place. It's a basic rule that you're not allowed to swim after 6 p.m. So I think it's just a coincidence that she mentioned this, or it could be both. It could be both coincidence and, the shit hits the fan after 6 p.m. occult-wise. Where the bar is present nearby the dock, slaves were thrown downwards in the water after they were killed. That's why the gentlemen of the local security company that keep the night watch there, they often hear at nighttime people talking, or they see boatsmen passing by with people in it. People that abundantly or overabundantly or excessively look like slaves. If they shine with a flashlight over the water to see everything clearly, then all of a sudden they don't see anything anymore. It is very scary, but I'm not afraid, because back when I worked there, I go there to work, and I always just talk to myself, and I basically talk to the place within my own mind, and I state that no one's allowed to hurt me, or that no one should bother me because I'm only doing my job, and so on. Again, I need to interject here. That is also common locally, especially people whose grandparents were born in the 1920s. Well before the abolishment of slavery. I don't know if slavery was abolished internationally in 1863, but bottom line is that regardless of whether that is the case, in the 1920s and 30s, people from that time era, they taught their children and their offspring in general that they're not supposed to, if they encounter any kind of spiritual activity that might harm them or try to harm them, or whether they get the impression that it's going to harm them, that they should always just talk within themselves. They should basically talk to the place through telepathy, if you will, and simply make their intentions known. This is a basic common sense dictates this. Okay, whenever you go to a place and the place is haunted, local people here in Suriname, they have the habit of, especially people that are, let's just say by today's standards, these would be elderly people. These would be people that are 50 years and up. People that were born in the 50s or the 60s, roughly estimated. Their parents and grandparents taught them that, if you go to a haunted location or if you experience a haunting, just make your intentions clear that, hey, I'm just here to do what I need to do, and for that reason, I should not be bothered because I'm not looking for any trouble. Just another interjection for clarity's sake. Yeah, a guard from the same security company that I mentioned has was deemed mentally ill, and while he was at work, again, let me repeat, a guard from the local security company, once there was a case where a guard from a local security company that was one of the watchmen there, he was on duty, he became mentally ill all of a sudden because he saw a snake and he started throwing stones or rocks at it until that snake was dead. But what the guard did not know is that this snake was a python snake, and immediately after killing the snake, he started behaving in a weird or weirdly fashion, and his behavior continuously became erratic to the point where he became unapproachable, and he just completely lost his mind. He became completely insane. He went completely insane, and management of that security company had to hastily carry him off and carry him to the main office of said company in the city, because he was not himself. He wasn't himself at all anymore. Personally, I also saw that python snake. I was leaning against a tree, and that's when I felt that it didn't feel normally. You know, the tree bark did not feel like a normal tree bark, and when I turned around and looked at the tree, I saw what I had leaned up against, and I was startled, and I immediately asked for forgiveness, and I spoke the way my elderly people taught me to speak, and nothing happened to me, thank goodness. I have respect for the place, and I won't bother anything because I know what the place is like, and that if you do not respect its history, it can mean your end, or it can mean the end for you. For people that don't get the python bit about the python snake, in a previous video, a video called Forest and Jungle Spirits, or the other way around, people that watch that video will understand this if they still remember that video, the content of that video. Long story short, for those that aren't aware of it, in that video I also discussed that certain spirits can also appear as snakes. It's at the very least locally a very common occurrence in Suriname, and these spirits appear strictly as python snakes. They don't appear as any other snakes, so no anaconda, no boa constrictor, or no poisonous snakes. In general, at the very least in general, it's always a python snake. So yeah, this security guard basically lost his mind because he went insane because he killed a python snake, which in reality was not a snake. It was simply the physical manifestation of a spirit from the past. It could have been a nearby forest spirit, or it could have been something else, okay? Or it could have been a thought form, it doesn't matter. In any case, it's a spirit, and that spirit immediately retaliated by obviously driving him insane. Yeah, let me continue. What people don't know is that in Berg Dal there are 5 graveyards in total. There is one completely at the top of the mountain itself. There is one at the foot of the mountain. There is one in the bushes. There is one alongside the road. And there is one nearby a tree right near the adventure center out back. That is an Indian burial ground. I think that a lot of spirits from the past cannot find peace, and that's why they keep drifting, or they keep walking alongside the nearby vicinity or region, because most people that have been here can definitely tell you what they've experienced. And at the top of the mountain, like I said, there are a lot more graves of slaves to be witnessed. The graves of male slaves is signified with a circle, and the graves of the women is signified with a heart. And yeah, that is self-explanatory. I don't really have to say anything about that. There was lastly an incident where a white Dutch woman came running to the restaurant or to the lobby with her towel around her, and she was completely out of it. I mean, she was completely startled and flabbergasted. She says that someone had knocked on her door a couple of times, and she simply did the door open, the door basically to her hut, and there was simply no one. She found it weird, and she immediately saw afterwards a small Indian girl. By Indian, we're talking about Native American here. She saw a small Native American girl near her window that kept peering inside. The Native American girl that kept looking inside had hair that was completely ungroomed and so not neat. Her hair was completely wildish in nature, and she seemed ungroomed as a whole, so not neatly taken care of. So her hair was a mess, she was a mess. According to that white woman that saw her, it was clearly noticeable that that girl was not a living human being, and that's why she was so scared and she was so startled, and she immediately rushed to the lobby. Afterwards, she did not want to sleep in her hut anymore, and she slept the entire night at the lobby. She spent the entire night at the lobby, including sleeping there, spending the night there. She refused to stay there longer after that evening or after that night. A lot of people here in the region or in the neighborhood have seen Indian girls or Native American girls. That is because before the times of slavery, before colonial or slavery times, Native Americans lived here in this region. So those Native Americans have also had their fair share of history, more than their fair share of history here at Berg Dal, and their spirit has clearly, some of their spirits clearly cannot find rest, and that's why they still drift around here from place to place. Very often there is a Native American girl that was sighted by security guards that work on the premises, and she approaches them and then has sex with them. Basically all men that she comes across, she has sex with, not just the security guards, because even guests that have stayed here, even from those guests we've heard stories that they've had sex with that Native American girl that came to visit them in the evening. That's something that a lot of men can vouch for, and something that have happened more than a fair share of times. I'm not gonna lie, when I first read this part, it just made me laugh. I thought to myself, holy crap, I need to go to that place too. Let me see if I can get myself some Native American pussy. But now I'm not laughing anymore. And yeah, it might sound funny, but again, completely legit, completely legitimate. There's also a grave on the mountain, and this is the first CEO of the local bank, so the Surinamese bank. This first CEO was buried with all of his valuables. He gave the command to do so. So basically everything should still be with him in his tombstone. But I wouldn't advise people to dig up his grave or to open up his tombstone, especially based on everything that I've said up to this point and Berg Dal's history. I will also be sending or attaching a picture of his grave and what it looks like. Maybe you can add that to my story. And yeah, I saw that. Okay, it's you can tell that it's a separate grave. Basically, it's like a VIP kind of grave or a VIP tombstone. Of course, it's completely overgrown with mold and it's completely green and everything. But yeah, this is allegedly the grave of the first CEO of one of Suriname's most well-known banks, which is abbreviated the DSB, and its full name is the Surinamese Bank. It is definitely one of Suriname's most well-known banks. And he was the first CEO, and he was buried along with all of his valuables, things that he deemed valuable, in his tombstone or in his grave at the top of the mountain or on the mountain itself. And yeah, you'll be able to tell immediately, like I said, a lot of people, a lot of so-called VIP graves on the top of the mountain or graves that belong to basic nobility from back in the day. So Dutch white men in general, or just Dutch white people or white Dutch people. And yeah, these graves you can clearly set them apart, because these graves are they are different. They basically have almost like a fence-like design, you know, an elegant fence-like design. Let's just say a white picket fence kind of design. Although it's not white, I think it's just generic grave. In any case, that's what it looks like. I seen the picture because this woman, the source, actually added the picture to this story, and the publisher actually published it the exact same way that it was submitted to the publisher itself. Yeah, there was also a time that there was some kind of prospect fever. There was a gold rush in Suriname, and in that time you had a lot of Chinese people that came to Berg Dal to go find gold on the mountain. They went to dig a tunnel, and in the end, or eventually, the tunnel, under very strange circumstances or mysterious circumstances, collapsed in on them, and all of those Chinese men died. They were buried alive in that tunnel, and their bodies were also never found again. This obviously only adds insult to injury to the place, and this does not make the place any better than what I've mentioned already up to this point. Something that also happens a lot in a certain lodge is that the toilets often flush themselves. You can also hear weird noises, and that the faucets open and close by themselves. What can I say? This is really a fucked up lodge. I mean, the woman literally used the phrase "fucked up lodge." This is a fucked up lodge, and I would rather not say which lodge exactly. But let's just say that a lot of things are wrong with it. I mean, this kind of stuff keeps happening on a regular basis. I think that if visitors read this, they themselves might divulge or might reveal what they themselves experienced in a certain lodge. So yeah, so basically, just to summarize, there was a gold rush. There was a gold rush back in the day. You know how gold rushes work. One prospector basically finds gold, and before you know it, he tells it to all of his buddies back in whatever country he comes from, and before you know it, the place is swarming with their kind. And it was the same thing, okay, and on plantation Berg Dal, which literally consisted of a mountain. I think the mountain is called the Blue Mountain, in Dutch Blauwe Berg. I'm not completely sure of that, but bottom line is that there's also a mountain there, obviously, based on everything I've said up to this point. There were Chinese people there, Chinese prospectors. One of them found gold, and he notified the rest, and before you know it, you had hundreds of prospectors. And they dug a tunnel underneath the earth, obviously, in the mountain itself, in an effort to extract as much gold as possible. It's just basic prospecting. They were basic gold miners. And under strange circumstances, like the story says, the mountain collapsed in on them. It completely caved in on them, and it buried them alive. So they were literally buried alive. Their bodies were never dug up. Everything was just left the way it is. And yeah, the rest is self-explanatory about the lodge. You know, weird noises, toilets flushing themselves, faucets opening and closing by themselves or on their own. You name it. Okay, now to continue. I need to mention something different, something separate. Personally, on a personal note, I've experienced a strong feeling that I'm being watched from within the jungle or from within the bushes. That does make me a bit uneasy, but I try not to focus on it. Of course, I'm not the only one that experiences. There are a lot of other people that also work here that experience this exact same thing. They get the feeling of being watched when they're at work. I know like no other that this place is not a good place. Even Cola Creek and Black Awatra have approximately the same problems at this place. You know, others see several Native American girls on several places, or men experience different things, but most of them do not dare speak of it. These are two other local swimming resorts that I already covered. One of them I already covered, Cola Creek. But Black Awatra, that's simply Surinamese. That's the local unofficial language, which literally translates it translates to black water. Yeah, Blaka means black and Watra means water. Keep in mind, I've been to these places on numerous occasions, and I personally have never experienced anything, but that obviously doesn't play a part in these haunted locations, because it's all subjective. Like I said, I know a lot, but I don't dare divulge or speak of everything, because I have my own personal reasons for this. If you ever go to stay at Berg Dal Eco Resort again, be careful and keep out if you go, take close notice of your children and be careful or be weary of your children's well-being when you go there, because it's simply a place that has something malevolent against children. Because I simply think that the devil himself is at Berg Dal. And yeah, that is pretty much it. So that's pretty much it, people. And yeah, here you have a picture of the CEO's grave, the CEO of the local Surinamese bank. That's what the grave looks like. I'm also going to add that picture so that you guys can see. Anyone that's seriously interested can check it out and see for themselves what that grave looks like as is described. So yeah, that is pretty much it. And keep in mind, this is only one story. In reality, keep in mind, this is only one story. In reality, there are more than a few stories, but the only two stories that have been published online, because publishing something online here is relatively new. It's fairly common. It's not something that you, I'm sorry, a bug is briefly distracting me. It's something relatively new, relatively fair. Yeah, what should I say for the rest? There's also a different story. The second story, I'm going to summarize that one for you guys myself, because the entire story does not need to be retold. It's 50% baggage. Long story short, a woman from the Netherlands, someone who has Surinamese roots, so someone that's from here, someone whose grandparents or parents are from here, but that person himself or herself lives in the Netherlands. It was a woman, I remember, yeah. A woman came to vacation here, and she has roots in Suriname. Let's just put it like that. She has roots in Suriname. Yeah, she has roots in Suriname, and she came to stay here, and she stayed a weekend, I think, at Berg Dal, at that same place that I just discussed. And she also indicated the haunted activity. She was standing alongside the dock with girlfriends. We're talking about, she was not alone, she was with 3 or 4 other girlfriends, female friends of hers. And it was basically kind of like a girls' vacation, girls' trip, you name it. And they heard voices come from the local river, the Surinamese river, but when they went to check it out, they couldn't even see anything or anyone. And they came across one of the employees, and one of the employees simply told them, one of the boatsmen specifically, that gives away boat-related tours or similar, he simply told them to not worry about it, and it's nothing. And when he saw that they were adamant on what they heard, he started getting slightly aggressive, and he started demanding that they leave the dock. And those ladies eventually left, and that woman that went to vacation, that came here on vacation specifically that I'm referring to, she saw a small child laid out at night, and she basically chased that child because that child started running towards the dock. She chased that child. She started whispering to him, "Where the hell are your parents? What are you doing at this hour, all alone, outside in such a place?" And it's when she touched that child that her entire hand felt paralyzed and numb. And that child turned around, and it literally looked like some kind of black or Negro version of a vampire. And she was like, "Look at this shit," and she ran back to her cabana. She ran back to her hut. And that was obviously a malevolent entity, and the entity kept bothering her, calling her mama, because it was most likely a deceased slave child that lost his mother. It was a boy. So that boy lost his mother most likely in colonial times again. And yeah, he's basically looking for a different mother, and that woman, unfortunately for her, was in his sights. But yeah, partially she's also to blame partially. That's what you get for just chasing strange children outside, but whatever, that's her problem. And in any case, that thing followed her back to her cabana. It kept bothering her. And keep in mind, this happened in full view of all of her girlfriends. At a certain point, when she turned on the light, all of her female friends could see that entity. And they claimed that the entity was not walking on feet. It had no feet to walk on. It walked on its soles. So it specifically walked on this part. So you can imagine what kind of a horror show that was. Imagine seeing something like that. And yeah, they tried to chase it away, and they left, and they left for the Netherlands back as quickly as possible. They went back to Holland, and that woman basically consulted a grandmother of hers that also lives in the Netherlands and knows a bit more about the history, and she gave her, she told her about the history, her and her girlfriends about the history, and that, like the first story that I read stated, a lot of bad things have happened there, and that's why you guys experienced that. And the story ends with the woman, she became pregnant, and when she was supposed to have her first child, it turned out to be a miscarriage, and when she gave birth to the child, guess what? That child literally looked like that same black slave boy, that dead slave boy that haunted her, with his face completely blue and his tongue being black and hanging out. And the baby was dead because it had its umbilical cord wrapped around its neck. So yeah, guess who is responsible for that? Obviously, it's that slave boy. So in essence, basically, that entity that haunted her, that entity that she encountered at Berg Dal, not only haunted her and gave her nightmares, but it killed her firstborn child. So yeah, these are two legitimate stories that I can find online. The first story being obviously legitimate because no one makes something like that up without any proper reason. In this case, this woman has no reason to make anything up. It's obviously someone that is more than familiar with the place, someone that has worked at the place, like she herself says, for years on end. So she knows more than enough about the place. She's seen and heard and can describe everything, and even then she's holding back. So imagine what else she knows. I would happily get into contact or try to get into contact with this woman if there's any way I could do that, but that's not possible. She likes to remain anonymous because she does not want the company coming after her. And yeah, she can describe everything in detail. I went over this story for a good while because I wanted to be sure that it was a legitimate story, but yeah, it is legitimate. Okay. Other interesting facts are that in colonial times they also built a military fort there, a post there. They built a military outpost because they had to defend from Maroons or Bush Negroes. So these Bush Negroes carried out raids back in times before slavery was abolished, and Dutch colonizers were still at war with the indigenous tribes here pretty much. And yeah, the place does indeed have such a violent history. And we all know what the case is in general with places that have such a history. These places, more often than not, can be haunted, depending. Like I said, I've been to the place and you'd never guess it, but that's nothing but a first impression, doesn't mean anything. And besides, I went during the day, I never stayed the night there. I went to the place, and yes, I would recommend it internationally to anyone. If you just check out the videos on what Berg Dal looks like, what Eco Resort Mountain and Valley looks like, it's really beautiful, no doubt about it. Everything is beautiful, from the swimming pool to the dock, the reception, the restaurant, everything. It's a really nice place where you can just go and hang, and you can just chill, you can just hang back, and you can just relax and take it easy. But the place is haunted. The fact that the place is also smack dab in the middle of 5 burial grounds also doesn't bode well for itself. Because that is true. Again, all of this stuff is true. Okay, there are indeed graves on top of the mountain, graves at the foot of the mountain. You've got graves on the side of the street. I saw the one on the side of the street. It's not really noticeable, but it's at the back entry, but it is present. And you've got graves on several instances. So yeah, the place is haunted. I mean, I can feel the energy that the place gives off. I'm feeling it in my hands intensely, even as we speak. So yeah, I know for a fact that that place is haunted. But again, there are so many haunted places here because there's so much shit that has happened here back in slavery times. So it's anything but surprising. In any case, it was interesting enough to share with you guys. Let me close off by telling you guys another random miscellaneous story. It's another, let's just say it's an add-on to the video Jungle and Forest Spirits. Like I said, I mentioned spirits can manifest as several things. They can adopt physical manifestations in an effort to blend in with their environment. Usually these are not dead people. These aren't the deceased. These are not elemental spirits, but spirits that are more close to nature, or they can be just random drifter spirits or thought forms that someone created, like an egregore or anything like that. But generally speaking, they're just generic paganistic spirits, or spirits that are more primitive in nature. In that video, I discussed that spirits can manifest as deer, for example. They can manifest as snakes, and the whole snake subject came to light again in part of this story. Last but not least, what I'm also going to say is that I once also read a story about someone in his home. This is a legitimate story, maybe 15 years ago, that simply disliked geckos. You know that geckos can come into your home. You've got normal geckos that just generic white geckos that come into your home. Okay, spirits can also appear like those. They don't appear too often as geckos. Rarely. The most common forms are snakes. When you're in the jungle, deer, you name it. But not other spirits. I mean, not geckos in general. And this took place in an urban area in general, or at the very least a suburban area. So it's still loosely put in the city. And this guy simply did not like geckos, and he saw a gecko walking across his wall close to one of his windows, and he hit that gecko, and he literally dropped dead the second he hit that gecko. So he went like this. He literally did this. Fucking gecko. Bam! The second he hit that gecko, he immediately dropped dead. Boom. Was immediately pronounced dead. Okay, he was dead on impact, so to speak. And yeah, it's obvious that was not just any gecko. It was not a gecko. It was a fucking spirit that manifested as a gecko. So yeah, that's simply another extension to stuff that I've already discussed. In any case, that is it. Again, like I said, for the third and last time, be sure to check out the link in the description below. I'm going to leave a link to the picture of the CEO of the first company, the first bank of Suriname, the Surinamese bank, the DSB bank. So that CEO, the first CEO of that bank, that's buried there with all of his valuables. It's a Dutch white guy. Yeah, it was a white Dutch colonial man. For the rest, I'm going to leave recreational videos so that you guys can see exactly what Berg Dal looks like, what eco resort mountain and valley looks like. Thanks for watching in any case. Bye.